Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Gaza faces severe malnutrition due to access issues. Russia-Ukraine conflict continues with stalled diplomacy. Powell anticipates rate cuts and trade improvements. U.S. government invests in Intel's semiconductor production. Ranil Wickremesinghe arrested amid Sri Lankan corruption investigation. North Korea-South Korea border tensions escalate after exchange. India's election commission struggles with credibility concerns. Canada reduces tariffs following trade negotiations. Pheu Thai party confronts a significant decline in support. Thai government prioritizes parliamentary discussion on MOU. AG considers appeal of Thaksin's Lese Majesté verdict. Indonesia removes deputy minister over extortion scandal. Ghislaine Maxwell's interview provided minimal revelations. FBI raids John Bolton's home. Eric and Lyle Menendez's parole remains denied. Gaza faces critical malnutrition crisis amidst humanitarian access challenges. The Gaza Strip is grappling with a severe malnutrition crisis, exacerbated by ongoing conflict and restricted humanitarian access. Multiple reports highlight a rapidly deteriorating situation, primarily affecting children under 5 and breastfeeding mothers. The core issue stems from a drastic reduction in food production, coupled with Israel's blockade, limiting aid deliveries and commercial food imports. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, operating with Israeli and U.S. support, has begun distributing supplementary food pastes, but volumes remain insufficient to address the widespread need. Approximately 5,800 children are currently receiving RTEF, a specialized nutritional paste, but the overall caseload of 70,000 children requiring this intervention is substantial. Israel's military, through the Hyoga agency, acknowledges shortages but attributes them to the UN's ineffective distribution and alleged Hamas theft, claims vehemently denied by Hamas officials. Despite increased aid deliveries via the main checkpoint, a significant portion of food trucks are lost to looting by desperate populations. The WHO and UNICEF express grave concerns, citing a sharp decline in aid reaching vulnerable populations, particularly due to conflict and looting. The UN aid agency OCHA reports that only 3% of the 290,000 children needing RUTF were reached in July, a critical shortfall. The conflict has decimated Gaza's agricultural sector, leaving the population reliant on imports. The limited commercial food supplies entering the enclave are unaffordable for most families. Multiple organizations emphasize the urgent need for increased food imports and improved distribution mechanisms. The situation is further complicated by the widespread destruction of infrastructure, including the sewage system, increasing the risk of illness among malnourished individuals. The core challenge remains the logistical and security constraints hindering humanitarian access, coupled with the ongoing conflict's devastating impact on Gaza's economy and food security. The crisis underscores the critical need for sustained international support to prevent further deterioration of the situation and mitigate the long-term consequences for the region's population. Russia and Ukraine diplomatic efforts stalled amidst ongoing conflict. Recent developments highlight the continued impasse in efforts to resolve the conflict in Ukraine, with diplomatic initiatives facing significant obstacles and ongoing hostilities. President Volodymyr Zelensky accuses Russia of actively preventing a meeting with Vladimir Putin, aiming to prolong the war. Donald Trump has been attempting to facilitate a meeting between the two leaders, initially setting a 2-week deadline, but with no concrete progress. Trump's timeline remains in effect, pending a bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Despite Trump's efforts, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov insists there are no plans for a meeting, citing disagreements regarding key issues, including Ukraine's non-membership of NATO and territorial disputes. Lavrov attributes the stalled progress to Ukraine's inflexibility, accusing them of rejecting compromises. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte emphasizes the need for robust security guarantees for Ukraine, mirroring Article 5, to deter further Russian aggression. These guarantees involve strengthening Ukraine's military and securing Western security commitments. However, past security agreements have been unsuccessful, underscoring the difficulty in achieving lasting security. The conflict continues with heavy Russian attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure, including drone and missile strikes, resulting in civilian casualties. Despite Trump's efforts, the situation remains volatile. Putin describes his recent meeting with Trump as very good, and expressed a desire to end the fighting, but has not committed to a meeting with Zelensky. Trump's timeline remains central to the situation, with the possibility of a bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky contingent on their willingness to engage. The ongoing attacks and lack of diplomatic breakthroughs suggest a prolonged conflict. The situation is further complicated by differing perspectives on key issues, including NATO membership and territorial concerns, hindering any potential resolution. Trump's repeated emphasis on the 2-week timeframe reflects his determination to assess Putin's intentions and potentially impose consequences for a lack of engagement. The World Cup draw announcement serves as a distraction from the core conflict issues. Powell signals rate cuts. Trade thaw between U.S. and Canada. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's indication of potential interest rate cuts in December has significant implications for the U.S. economy and financial markets. Simultaneously, a notable shift in trade relations is unfolding between the United States and Canada, driven by key announcements. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has taken a decisive step to dismantle some of the retaliatory tariffs previously imposed on American goods, with the changes slated to take effect September 1st. The scope of the tariff reductions is substantial, encompassing a wide array of goods that adhere to the stipulations of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement (USMCA). However, Carney has maintained the 25% tariff on American steel and aluminum, alongside tariffs on American automobiles, demonstrating a strategic approach. This decision reflects a calculated response to the USMCA framework. Crucially, Carney's actions were influenced by a direct conversation with President Donald Trump, who advocated for the removal of these tariffs to stimulate trade negotiations. They agreed to intensify discussions regarding strategic sectors and identify immediate trade opportunities. The White House applauded Carney's move, describing it as long overdue. The Canadian market is keenly observing the potential impact on businesses. Canadian companies are evaluating the prospect of increased imports from the United States. Furthermore, the U.S. is exploring new market opportunities in Africa, a development that adds another layer to the evolving global trade landscape. Powell's anticipated rate cuts, coupled with this trade normalization between the U.S. and Canada, represent a significant moment for both economies, highlighting a willingness to engage in collaborative economic strategies. The White House emphasized continuing discussions regarding trade and national security concerns, signaling a commitment to ongoing dialogue. The U.S. government takes 10% stake in Intel to bolster semiconductor manufacturing. The United States government has finalized an agreement to acquire a 10% stake in Intel, a move aimed at strengthening domestic semiconductor manufacturing and enhancing national technological security. This investment, totaling $8.9 billion, will be funded through previously unutilized grants from the KIPAPS and Science Act alongside $3.2 billion from the Department of Defense's Secure Enclave program. The deal involves purchasing 433.3 million shares at $12.47 per share. Intel CEO Lip Bhutan has agreed to the arrangement, recognizing the strategic importance of maintaining U.S. leadership in advanced chip technology. The initiative, spearheaded by President Donald Trump, reflects a broader effort to reshore semiconductor production and counter reliance on foreign manufacturers, particularly Taiwan. The investment is intended to support Intel's plans to establish a new manufacturing facility in Ohio, which has faced repeated delays due to the company's financial challenges. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick were instrumental in negotiating the agreement. The move comes amid concerns about Intel's competitive position, with rivals like NVIDIA dominating the market for advanced chip technology. Intel has struggled to keep pace with technological advancements, particularly in areas like artificial intelligence, and has undergone significant workforce reductions under Tan's leadership. Japan's SoftBank is also investing $2 billion into Intel, further demonstrating confidence in the company's future. The White House intends to use the stake not as a direct driver of Intel's sales, but rather as a stabilizing force, aiming to facilitate the Ohio facility's development and bolster overall U.S. semiconductor capabilities. The government intends to avoid pressuring other U.S. tech companies to purchase Intel's chips. Furthermore, NVIDIA and AMD have recently agreed to pay 15% of their chip sales in China to the government in exchange for export licenses, highlighting the government's broader approach to securing critical technologies. The agreement represents a significant intervention by the U.S. government in the semiconductor industry, signaling a renewed commitment to domestic production and technological leadership. Ranil Wickremesinghe arrest corruption investigation intensifies in Sri Lanka. Former Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe was arrested on Friday, marking a significant development in an ongoing investigation into alleged misuse of public funds. The arrest, carried out by the Criminal Investigations Department, CID, centers around his travel expenses incurred during his presidency, specifically a 2023 detour to the UK. Wickremesinghe was providing a statement to the CID at the time of his apprehension. The investigation focuses on a trip made on Wickremesinghe's return from a G77 summit in Cuba, where he attended an awards ceremony for his wife, Professor Maithri Wickremesinghe, who held an honorary professorship at the University of Wolverhampton. Authorities allege that approximately 17 million Sri Lankan rupees, around 56,000, was used for this private visit. Wickremesinghe, a six-time former prime minister and a prominent figure in Sri Lankan politics since 1977, had served as president from 2022 to 2024. He gained prominence for helping the nation recover from its worst economic crisis, securing an International Monetary Fund's (IMF) bailout. However, unpopular austerity measures associated with the bailout, coupled with perceptions of his close ties to the previous administration, contributed to his defeat in the 2024 presidential election by Anura Kumara Dissanayake. Prior to his arrest, 63 individuals, including politicians, relatives, and government officials, were detained on corruption charges. The investigation highlights a broader trend of government scrutiny regarding financial mismanagement. Wickremesinghe's arrest represents the most high-profile case since the left-leaning National People's Power secured the presidency. The economic turmoil began in 2019, fueled by poor government policies, tourism collapse, and the 2019 bombings, leading to a severe foreign exchange crisis and ultimately, Wickremesinghe's rise to power following Rajapaksa's resignation. The situation underscores the ongoing challenges facing Sri Lanka as it navigates its economic recovery. North Korea-South Korea border tensions rise following warning shot exchange. Recent weeks have witnessed a significant escalation in tensions along the Korean Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, separating North and South Korea, culminating in a South Korean response involving the firing of warning shots at North Korean soldiers attempting to cross the border. This incident occurred as South Korean President Lee Jae-myung undertook a diplomatic visit to Tokyo and Washington, highlighting the ongoing instability despite recent political shifts. North Korea's state media characterized the shots as a deliberate provocation, accusing Seoul of risking uncontrollable tensions within the border region. The exchange transpired when a group of North Korean troops briefly crossed the heavily fortified DMZ at approximately 1500 local time in Seoul on Tuesday. These soldiers subsequently retreated back to the northern side of the demarcation line. North Korean Army LT Gen Ko Jong-chol asserted that South Korean military forces utilized a machine gun to fire over 10 warning shots in response. Pyongyang remains skeptical of Lee's administration, particularly given the president's campaign promises of improved inter-Korean relations, which have been largely dismissed. Adding to the complexities, South Korea previously suspended its loudspeaker propaganda broadcasts across the border, a measure intended to foster trust, but Pyongyang views these broadcasts as acts of war and has previously threatened their destruction. The two Koreas have remained technically at war since the Korean War concluded in 1953, without a formal peace treaty. The DMZ, a strip of no man's land, serves as a constant reminder of this unresolved conflict. The ongoing activity of North Korea in permanently sealing its border with the South further exacerbates the situation, underlining the persistent challenges to regional stability and necessitating continued vigilance from both nations. The exchange represents a concerning development in an already volatile geopolitical landscape. India's election commission faces credibility crisis amidst allegations and controversy. India's election commission, ECI, is currently grappling with a significant crisis of credibility, fueled by a series of allegations of voter manipulation and procedural failures surrounding the recent revision of electoral rolls, particularly in Bihar. Opposition parties, led by Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, have launched a sustained campaign questioning the ECI's handling of the process and its potential collusion with the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party (BJP). Gandhi initiated a 300 km voter Adhikar Yatra, voter rights march in Bihar to protest the ECI's actions, escalating the political battle. The core of the controversy revolves around the Special Intensive Revision, a SIR conducted between June and July, which resulted in the exclusion of 6.5 million voters from the draft electoral rolls. Critics argue the process was rushed and inadequately documented, disenfranchising migrants and potentially introducing inaccuracies. The ECI maintains its representatives conducted extensive voter verification, aiming to update the list after over 20 years. However, opposition parties point to errors in the draft rolls, including incorrect gender assignments and the inclusion of deceased individuals, as evidence of systemic problems. The ECI's handling of the publication of the excluded voter list has also drawn criticism. The Commission initially released scanned physical copies instead of machine-readable lists, hindering independent verification. Following a Supreme Court directive, the ECI was compelled to publish a searchable list along with explanations for exclusions. Chief Election Commissioner Ganesh Kumar responded to the allegations with a strong defense of the ECI's actions, demanding Gandhi provide an affidavit or apologize for accusations of vote theft and misleading citizens. Kumar cited a 2019 Supreme Court judgment regarding privacy concerns. Despite Kumar's assertions, the controversy continues, with opposition figures accusing him of an adversarial tone. Experts emphasize that large fluctuations in voter numbers are expected during intensive verification processes, as demonstrated by previous revisions, including a 2008 revision in Karnataka. The Supreme Court's intervention underscores the ECI's procedural shortcomings, prompting calls for greater transparency and accountability. The situation highlights a critical test for India's democratic institutions and the ECI's ability to maintain public trust. Canada reduces retaliatory tariffs on U.S. amid trade negotiations. Canada announced it will remove some of its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, a move welcomed by the White House and intended to facilitate ongoing trade negotiations. The decision, effective September 1st, will see Canada align with the U.S. by ending tariffs on goods compliant with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, aiming to establish free trade for the vast majority of goods between the two nations. However, tariffs on automobiles, steel, and aluminum will remain in place. Prime Minister Mark Carney stated that Canada's tariff rate on goods is significantly lower, approximately 5.6%, compared to the average of 16% imposed on Canadian products by other countries, highlighting a unique advantage for Canadian businesses and workers. This reduction is part of a broader strategy to accelerate discussions regarding autos, steel, aluminum, and lumber ahead of a USMCA review next year. The U.S., under President Trump, has previously imposed tariffs on a wide range of goods globally, including steel, aluminum, and automobiles, leading to reciprocal retaliatory tariffs from Canada. U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, has criticized Canada's continued tariffs, arguing they impede trade talks and represent a Canadian decision. A Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, sharply criticized Carney's decision, labeling it a capitulation and a missing of elbows, reflecting a contrasting view on Canada's approach to trade negotiations. The move comes amidst significant economic disruption for Canadian businesses, particularly within the automotive sector, with Ontario reporting a loss of 38,000 jobs in recent months. The U.S. has maintained a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum imports, excluding those from the U.K., alongside tariffs on auto imports. Canada's retaliatory tariffs of 25% on American steel, aluminum, and autos remain in effect. Economists warn that these U.S. tariffs are hugely disruptive to Canada, given its role as a major supplier of these metals. The negotiations are focused on resolving outstanding trade issues and securing a more favorable trade agreement for Canada. Pheu Thai faces existential crisis amidst declining popularity. The Pheu Thai party is experiencing a severe decline in public support, raising serious questions about its future viability in the upcoming elections. Recent polls, including Anita Institute survey, reveal a dramatic drop in both the party's and Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatра's approval ratings, with the People's Party surging in popularity. This downturn is fueled by several factors, most notably the leaked phone call between Paetongtarn and Cambodian President Hun Sen, which has been widely criticized as a sign of weak leadership and a compromised stance on the Thai-Cambodian border dispute. Public outrage over the leak has significantly damaged the party's image, particularly among rural and working-class voters, its traditional base of support in the Northeast. Internal dissent within the party, stemming from dissatisfaction among Northeastern MPs regarding representation in the cabinet, has further exacerbated the situation. The party's leadership, perceived as unresponsive to these grievances, is facing accusations of complacency and a lack of strategic vision. Adding to the pressure, the NIDA Institute's August survey highlighted a deep-seated lack of trust in key Thai institutions, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the government receiving particularly low confidence ratings. This reflects broader public sentiment regarding government effectiveness and crisis management. Amidst this crisis, speculation is rife regarding potential successors to Paetongtarn. Former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra is actively working to maintain Pheu Thai's position, reportedly attempting to influence the Constitutional Court's ruling on the leaked phone call and exploring the possibility of former Attorney General Chaikasam Nidasiri as a potential prime ministerial candidate. Furthermore, Thaksin is allegedly attempting to sideline Bumja Thai, aiming to secure the Interior Ministry to strengthen Pheu Thai's influence. Conservative voters, disillusioned with existing parties, are increasingly considering a return of former Prime Minister Jen Prayut Chan-o-cha, potentially tipping the balance in favor of Pheu Thai. However, the party's future hinges on its ability to address internal divisions, regain public trust, and effectively respond to the shifting political landscape. The next election represents a critical juncture for Pheu Thai, and its success or failure will profoundly shape Thailand's political trajectory. Thai government remains silent on MOE revocation, prioritizing parliamentary deliberation. The Thai government, led by acting Prime Minister Pheu Thai, is taking a cautious approach to the proposed revocation of the 2000 and 2001 Memorandums of Understanding, MOU 43 and 44 concerning land border demarcation and maritime boundaries in the Gulf of Thailand. Pheu has firmly stated that the matter requires careful deliberation within the parliament, avoiding premature public statements. The government's stance reflects a desire to navigate the sensitive issue through established parliamentary processes, emphasizing national interests, sovereignty, and security. The Bumjathai Party, BJT, has been a vocal proponent of revoking the MOUs, citing repeated Cambodian violations and escalating border tensions. Despite this pressure, the government remains committed to a measured response, asserting that bilateral negotiations can proceed regardless of the MOU's existence. Responding to a proposal by opposition MP Rangsamanrome to establish a committee for study, Pheu reiterated that the final decision rests with Parliament, dismissing speculation of an early adjournment. First Deputy House Speaker Chaya Prama has confirmed that the MOUs are not currently on the parliamentary agenda, underlining the importance of respecting established rules. The BJT through MP Paradorn Prasananathakul continues to advocate for urgent parliamentary debate, highlighting the direct impact on national security and criticizing past delays. He stresses the need for a timely resolution, framing the issue as a matter of national concern rather than political maneuvering. Paradorn further accuses Cambodia of consistently failing to uphold commitments, damaging bilateral relations. Acting Defense Minister Jen Natafon Narkfenit echoes the government's position, advocating for handling the issue within the framework of parliamentary procedures. The ongoing debate reflects a complex situation involving international law, border disputes, and the need for a strategic approach to Thailand's relationship with Cambodia. The government's primary focus remains on ensuring a comprehensive and legally sound resolution through the democratic process. AG considers appeal of Thaksin lese majeste verdict. The Attorney General is currently evaluating the possibility of appealing the criminal court's decision to acquit former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra in a lese majeste case. Following the ruling, the Office of the Attorney General OAG stated that prosecutors must first obtain the full court transcript, including witness testimony, for thorough review. This information will then be submitted to the Department of Appellate Litigation within the OAG for assessment and a legal opinion. This opinion will be forwarded to the Deputy Attorney General and ultimately the Attorney General, who holds the sole authority to decide on an appeal. The AG has 30 days for this decision, with potential extensions of up to 30-day increments as standard procedure. The case, classified as an extraterritorial offense, falls exclusively under the Attorney General's jurisdiction for appeal initiation. Thaksin's lawyer, Winyet Chartmantry, explained that the court dismissed the case on multiple grounds, primarily due to the prosecution's failure to meet the required burden of proof. Specifically, the court found that the prosecution's evidence, a video clip from an interview Thaksin gave in South Korea in 2015, was incomplete and lacked conclusive proof of manipulation. The court's analysis centered on grammatical considerations, determining that the subject, verb, and object of the statements did not clearly identify Thaksin as the individual protected under Section 112 of the Criminal Code. Prosecution witnesses attempted to interpret the statements in a way that implicated Thaksin, but the court dismissed their testimony as unreliable due to apparent bias and inconsistent statements. Several witnesses had previously expressed political views and provided partisan accounts, further undermining their credibility. The court's emphasis was on the lack of objective evidence and the tendency of witnesses to infer or imagine Thaksin's meaning, rather than presenting concrete proof of a connection to Section 112. The court's decision hinged on the absence of a clear identification of the individual protected under the law, despite the use of the pronoun. Indonesia removes Deputy Minister amid extortion scandal. Indonesia's President Prabowo Subianto has taken a significant step to demonstrate his commitment to combating corruption by removing Emmanuel Ebenezer from his position as Deputy Manpower Minister. This marks the first time a sitting member of Prabowo's cabinet has been implicated in an anti-corruption investigation, presenting a crucial test for his administration's integrity. The dismissal followed allegations that Ebenezer was involved in an extortion scheme targeting businesses seeking workplace safety certificates. The investigation, initiated by the National Anti-Corruption Agency KPK, based on a public complaint, revealed Ebenezer's alleged receipt of 3 billion rupiah 183,000 in kickbacks during December 2024. A coordinated sting operation resulted in the arrest of Ebenezer and approximately a dozen other individuals. He will be detained for 20 days while further investigation proceeds. Ebenezer has denied the accusations and requested clemency. This incident underscores Prabowo's pledge of zero tolerance for corruption, delivered during his annual national address. Ebenezer's prior involvement with a pro-Prabowo volunteer group and his current membership in the Gerindra party add a layer of complexity to the situation. The swift action has sparked reactions, with a lawmaker criticizing the arrest as an own goal, while social media has been filled with responses, including a controversial remark Ebenezer made earlier this year urging those dissatisfied with the economy to just leave the country. Manpower Minister Yassir expressed the seriousness of the situation. Experts such as Nikki Friesel of the Center for Strategic and International Studies have praised the government's efforts to uphold the law without exception. However, Friesel emphasizes that sustained structural reforms are vital to truly eradicate corruption within Indonesia's largest economy. He cautions that simply punishing high-level officials without addressing systemic issues will likely lead to recurring problems. The removal of Ebenezer represents a symbolic gesture, but investors will be closely watching to see if deeper, lasting changes are implemented. Ghislaine Maxwell's interview yields limited revelations, fuels controversy. Recent news coverage centers on Ghislaine Maxwell's interview with the Justice Department, a significant step in the ongoing investigation surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. The interview, conducted by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, has produced limited new information while simultaneously intensifying controversy surrounding the Trump administration's handling of the case. The core of the revelations lies in Maxwell's assertions, which largely contradict previous claims and further complicate the narrative. She repeatedly denied involvement in Epstein's illicit activities, including claims of recruiting young women and witnessing non-consensual acts. Crucially, she denied any connection between Epstein and former President Bill Clinton, directly refuting Trump's repeated assertions about Clinton's frequent visits to Epstein's island. The interview's release coincided with the Justice Department's decision to redact the names of victims, a move that has drawn criticism. However, Maxwell included the names of prominent figures, including Trump, Clinton, and Harvey Weinstein, further fueling speculation and accusations of a cover-up. Maxwell's claims about Epstein's movements and activities, particularly regarding the alleged message sessions, have been met with skepticism due to her criminal conviction. The administration's decision to move Maxwell to a lower security prison camp, despite her status as a sex offender, remains unexplained. The Justice Department's initial reluctance to release information and subsequent decision to include the names of prominent figures has created a complex and contentious environment. The interview's limited revelations, combined with the administration's handling of the case, continue to generate significant public and political scrutiny. The ongoing investigation and legal proceedings surrounding Epstein's crimes remain central to the narrative. FBI raids home of outspoken critic John Bolton. The Federal Bureau of Investigation conducted a search of the home of John Bolton, a prominent and vocal critic of former President Donald Trump, on Friday, focusing on potential violations related to the handling of classified information. The raid occurred in Bethesda, Maryland, a suburb of Washington, D.C., where Bolton resides. The investigation centers around allegations that Bolton may have improperly possessed or disclosed classified documents, a concern that arose following the publication of his tell-all memoir, The Room Where It Happened, which detailed his observations within the Trump administration. The search was initiated after a period of scrutiny regarding Bolton's actions and the dissemination of information from the book. While Bolton was not present at his residence during the raid, the FBI agents were authorized to conduct their investigation. This action follows a pattern of escalating scrutiny directed towards former Trump administration officials, many of whom have become targets of legal and investigative efforts since the conclusion of the 2020 presidential election. Bolton's history as a national security hawk and his frequent public criticism of Trump, particularly regarding Iran, have fueled the investigation. He has also received death threats from Iranian officials, highlighting the potential dangers associated with his outspoken views. The raid underscores a broader trend of what many observers describe as a retribution presidency, characterized by investigations and legal actions targeting individuals associated with the previous administration. Furthermore, the investigation mirrors other ongoing efforts to examine the conduct of former officials, including investigations into former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan. The actions taken by the FBI reflect a concerted effort to examine and potentially hold accountable individuals who served under the previous administration. The search represents a significant escalation in the scrutiny of those who challenge Trump's policies and decisions during his time in office. Eric and Lyle Menendez parole denied. Future uncertain, the Menendez brothers, Eric and Lyle, have both been denied parole by California's parole board, marking a significant setback in their decades-long efforts to secure freedom. The denials stem from concerns about their continued risk to public safety and a persistent pattern of problematic behavior during their incarceration. The hearing focused heavily on Eric's conduct, particularly his repeated violations concerning the use of a mobile phone within the prison environment, highlighting a disregard for institutional rules. Lyle's hearing also centered on his illicit phone use, alongside questions regarding his academic achievements and involvement in prison programs, though his risk assessment flagged antisocial personality traits. Both brothers have been convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to murder in the 1989 shooting deaths of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, at their Beverly Hills mansion. The initial trials were fraught with legal challenges, including a mistrial due to a deadlocked jury and subsequent retrials. The brothers initially claimed self-defense, alleging years of sexual and emotional abuse by their father, though this claim was never substantiated in court. The parole board's decision was influenced by a recent request from the Los Angeles District Attorney, George Gascon, to reduce the brothers' life sentences to 50 years to life, citing a desire for rehabilitation and a recognition of their past actions. Despite positive changes during their imprisonment, including academic achievements and mentoring other inmates, the board deemed these factors insufficient to outweigh the ongoing risk posed by their behavior. The brothers' future hinges on a separate request for a new trial, fueled by newly discovered evidence suggesting childhood sexual abuse. Additionally, Governor Gavin Newsom is considering a clemency request, potentially offering a reduced sentence or a pardon. The legal proceedings are complex, involving multiple avenues for appeal and review. The parole board's decision highlights the protracted nature of the Menendez case and the ongoing debate surrounding the brothers' culpability and potential for rehabilitation. The brothers' continued attempts to secure freedom are likely to remain a focal point of public and legal attention for the foreseeable future. The brothers can reapply for parole in 3 years, or sooner if the board deems it appropriate.